Donald Trump has never truly cared about Charlie Kirk. That became crystal clear in his so-called eulogy, where instead of honoring Kirk, he spent most of the time praising himself. This is exactly what Trump has done since Kirk's tragic shooting. Exploiting a false narrative that portrays Kirk as a civil rights advocate, something that simply doesn't align with reality. Rather than mourning, Trump is using that image to advance his own political agenda. But here's what he may not have anticipated. Footage of Charlie Kirk exists that does not paint a flattering picture, particularly when it comes to one of the most damaging controversies facing this administration, the Epstein scandal. A video tied to this issue has now gone public thanks to Congressman Thomas Massie, one of Trump's fiercest critics in the House. Reports say Trump is scrambling in response to what was revealed about his past connections. And today, we're going to break it all down. But first, if you find this coverage valuable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It really helps support our work. Now, before we play the Kirk clip that's fueling new scrutiny of Trump's Epstein ties, let's start with a fresh example of Trump's attempts to deflect and cover up. And that comes from Patel, who was recently called out by Adam Schiff.
Well, I think he lied to our committee repeatedly, most specifically when I asked him, in addition to those questions, about the firing of top FBI agents who have reported in a civil complaint that Patel basically told them that they were going to get rid of anyone who investigated Donald Trump. Didn't matter what the merits were. They were going to get rid of anyone who investigated Donald Trump, and there was nothing that these agents could do about it. And he acknowledged that he would get sued and it might be illegal, but they were going to do it anyway. So when I asked him about those allegations, he denied them all. I think that he will be deposed in that civil litigation and shown to be lying to the U.S. Congress. But also, he testified that the only person they had evidence that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked young women to was Jeffrey Epstein. That after, for years, calling for the release of Jeffrey Epstein's list, effectively, he was saying that the only person on that list was Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think anyone buys that, and I don't think it's consistent with what victims have said. Sadly, we have this person now running the FBI who's not respected by the people in the Bureau, who is incompetent, as we saw in his erroneous announcements that they had the suspect in custody when they didn't, regarding the terrible shooting of Charlie Kirk. So, I worked with the FBI for years as a prosecutor. They are the premier law enforcement agency in the country, but right now they are under the worst possible leadership.
I know that you, sir, are reintroducing what you call the Protecting Our Democracy Act. It's to put a limit on Trump's presidential power. Can you tell us what's in that bill and which Republicans have said they will support you on this?
It's important to understand that when Donald Trump works to keep the Epstein files hidden, it isn't only about protecting himself. He's also shielding others who were close to Epstein. People who are still alive and could, under oath, provide testimony that would further damage Trump's position. He knows he can't control what they might say, the way he tries to control documents or limit access to evidence. Their words could be both revealing and damaging. This is also why there's so much silence around Ghislaine Maxwell's knowledge of Epstein's network, which reportedly included connections to multiple figures within Trump's own circle. That silence serves to protect not just Trump's reputation, but also those of powerful allies. And the links go back years, all the way to the first sweetheart deal Epstein received from Alex Acosta, who later served in Trump's cabinet. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett recently shed new light on this history, which ties directly to the context of what Charlie Kirk said in the video we'll be looking at.
So I was trying, but obviously there were a lot of members in the room, as well as a number of attorneys for both sides. And so I probably could have sat with him alone myself and dug for days. But I specifically was also listening to him. So at one point in time, he was talking about they were basically gauging the strength of their case, which is not abnormal. That is what prosecutors are always going to do. And basically he said, as a team, they came to the conclusion that the case was just too weak and it would be better if they had a guarantee of getting him into prison, as well as being able to make sure that he was going to be a registered sex offender. They did say they did not know about the work release, or he said he didn't know about the work release, and that wasn't part of the agreement. He says that, he also, well, let me back up. I basically wanted to know, why is it that the case was weak in your opinion? He said that he felt like there were going to be impeachment issues with the witnesses.
That the witnesses weren't credible.
And so then I was saying, tell me what the impeachment issues were going to be. Because it's one thing to throw it out there. It's another thing when I'm breaking it down to you, because I understand what is impeachable and what's not. And so he's like, well, some of them didn't want to testify. I said, well, that's not impeachment evidence at all. And has there ever been a situation where you've brought a witness forward who did not want to testify? What other evidence was there? And if you felt like the case was weak, and most of us have rules where if you've got a statement from a witness and because of fear, maybe because of threats, because he said some of them were fearful, some of them allegedly had been threatened, all kinds of different reasons, man, there's ways to work around this. I say, let me tell you something. I have tried these cases on the other side, and I can tell you that we have had people come forward with hardly any evidence, because we have what we call a one witness rule in this country, which says that if you believe this one witness beyond a reasonable doubt, then that is enough.
Right.
And it really comes because of sex cases, because a lot of times who else can testify about what happened in that room? So I was really getting at him, and he said, well, 2006 was a different time. It was a lot different as it relates to the movement and what was going on. I said, let me tell you something.
Donald Trump has always surrounded himself with people close to Epstein. And why is that? It's not just because they were all best buddies. It's because Donald Trump knew he needed to keep that circle nice and tight if he could avoid accountability, which he thinks he can. But that's not going to be the case, especially when his so-called martyr is having his memory not just used to bolster Trump, but to blow up Trump's Epstein scandal. And that's courtesy of Thomas Massie. Massie shared this clip of Charlie Kirk and said, "Release all the Epstein files."
I think the DOJ should immediately move to unseal all the Epstein documents in the Southern District of New York.
Yeah. Everything.
And
Everything except child sexual assault material.
I think every file should be released to the public the same way as the JFK files. Let the American people decide.
Put them out there, because if there's nothing in there, then we can see there's nothing in there. Now,
Donald Trump claims to honor the memory of his so-called friend, but if that were true, why not release the Epstein files? Charlie Kirk himself eventually called for them to be made public. At first, during a Turning Point conference, he told young people to ignore the issue and move on. He defended Trump, even suggesting the scandal was just a partisan hoax. He distrusted science. He distrusted the 2020 election results, yet on this, Trump's cover-up, he trusted the government. But later, Kirk changed his position and said the files should be released. Now, Republicans are building ceremonies and tributes around him, but none of them want to honor that particular call. They'd rather bury it. And let's be clear, many Democrats also went along with a resolution to praise him, which was deeply disappointing. As Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett pointed out, not a single woman of color supported it. And that says a lot about who Kirk targeted in his career. His rhetoric inspired harassment, including threats toward historically black colleges immediately after his death. For all his claims about debate and free speech, Charlie Kirk didn't practice either. He shut down critics at his events and avoided facing true experts. His goal wasn't dialogue. It was attacking higher education and encouraging conformity. That's the legacy he left behind. And now, as Donald Trump works harder than ever to silence dissent, it's critical we don't let the right win on this issue. Congressman Jamie Raskin recently put it best. Protecting free speech means calling out those who try to weaponize it while silencing others.
Is it legal for anyone to speak ill of the president like that? That's what Yamiche just reported that Donald Trump said.
Well, certainly in communist China it is, and in Vladimir Putin's Russia it is, in any totalitarian society it is, but not where you've got the First Amendment. I love Jimmy Kimmel. I love Bruce Springsteen. Donald Trump hates them. We each have the ability to go see what we want to see and watch what we want to watch. But when he uses the power of the government to try to remove a comedian from a broadcast licensee, that is coercive censorship. And there are Supreme Court decisions going back to 1963 on this. Bantam Press is a case where basically the Supreme Court said the government cannot use coercive leverage against private entities in order to censor speakers. And we saw a case like that recently benefiting the NRA versus Vulo out of New York, where again the Supreme Court said that a state official cannot use its power to try to get private corporations to censor other people because of their speech. So the idea that now somebody read the cases and is saying, oh, this is just them, it's not us, is contradicted by everything Donald Trump has been saying, because he's been saying that this speech is illegal and shouldn't be allowed and so on. And that's the way he thinks. He thinks like a king, like a monarch, like if you offend him, then suddenly your speech is illegal. They don't defend the right for anybody to speak unless they're speaking in favor of them.
This administration continues to operate in a corrupt and dangerous way, and we're going to keep calling it out. At the same time, we will keep pushing back against corporate leaders who cave to political pressure. If you want to support this channel, the best way is simple. Hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stayed with us until the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I will see you soon.